Alrighty, well, let's get started. Maybe more people that will jump in, and thank you, Shannon, for teaching me how to turn on the doorbell so I don't miss anybody. That's a new skill. So if you're hosting Zoom meetings and you have people on hold until you approve them in from the waiting room, you can go to more under the participant list and turn on the chime, and it'll tell you when someone comes in, which it does at the beginning automatically, but not for all the subsequent people. So you have to turn that on. All righty, great. So good. This might be a small group, which I'm excited about because I really wanted to make this an interactive gathering today. And I'm sorry, Lenny couldn't be here today. She had a doctor's appointment, but I figured that we could do some interactive work around ideas, the big ideas. So let me just kind of frame what I was thinking and how this came up, and then how the theme this week got kind of coalesced from some work and conversations I had with Chris here, and also Meredith and the Jersey City Arts Council, which I was working with last night. So the theme this week is, what's the big idea? And the whole concept there is really that I am personally finding, and I think the biggest thing that people are constantly working with and maybe struggling with is what people kind of put into the basket of messaging. That people are struggling with, like, how do I convey these nuggets of information? That's always something that people bring to us and me at Social Impact Studios, even before the pandemic. People are constantly rethinking their message. They want to have it be they want to say the right thing. They want to find the words to convey what they're thinking, all of that. So that's always been the case. And a lot of what we've been talking about over the weeks is designed to help people get clear on what they're doing, and then who they're speaking to, and then as a result, be able to just convey messaging that's really authentic and genuine and connected to priorities and what you're doing, your goals. And I think that during this time, there's this added component of relevancy. So it's kind of good in a way, because it's exposing to us how our messaging can be very not just layered, but not actually genuine. That we can create this messaging to try to convey something as if it's a gimmick that if you figure out your messaging, you'll be able to get it across, and that there's some formula for messaging, that there's some right or wrong for messaging. And what this time, I think, has helped us really get to simplified core reality of what we are actually doing, and therefore what we're talking about. I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of instances where I've written something or have said something in a certain way, and I was like, that totally sounds fake. I just said that because it's a way to position it, or it's slogan talk or something, but it's not actually me talking or what I actually think. I'm kind of putting another layer of a persona on my message. And I personally think that your public image can completely be an authentic representation of what you're doing. The idea of having to spin your message or change your message based on how somebody else needs to hear it in order for it to be palatable for them, in my mind, is total bullshit. Being cognizant of and empathetic to how your audience might hear you and what they understand, that's different than you changing your messaging because you think you need to say it in a certain way in order to convince somebody to do something, or get approval, get acknowledgement of your thing, your idea. I've got this idea, and even it's a split second thing. We do this thing where we want validation. And everybody who's on this call is an innovative thinker, and you're thinking of things differently than probably, the other 90% of the world, because you're doing work that is visionary. And by that nature, it's not easy to like translate. So sometimes we go to like messaging that's more about like, well, what words can I use from their world to make sense of my world for them? And there's a difference, and I can really feel it. And so I wanted to kind of share with you a process that I went through recently during this pandemic that really spurred these weekly meetings and how I'm thinking about and talking about our social enterprise and my work and what I'm called to do and how I think of it. So I, like you and like everybody else, was in the middle of this pandemic thinking like, okay, I just spent 3 years going through a process of changing our business model so we could really promote our public image works method as our main thing. And it's not super expensive, but it's not like free, and it's not a low cost item. It's like something that you got to do, and we need to pay for the time. So I thought, great, I spent all this time, and now we were going to launch this thing, and now I can't do that because nothing is like, everything imploded. And so I myself was going through like, well, what is it really that I do have to offer? What is it that is, no matter what, I'm going to be out there doing and will connect me to the things that will, support. I'll have enough resources to live, and my family business will be okay. But what is it that's really like core to that? And how should I be talking about that? And really, it's that idea of the nugget, it's the messaging. And this is just what I hear over and over again, which is like, well, how do we message that? As if like messaging is some sort of like, you put it in a machine and you crank it and then it comes out and then you use it. So I went to my go-to things. So I started with my one-line starter. And this came up yesterday, the conversation that you and I were having, Chris, about the one-line starter helped me realize that this theme of the big idea, getting to the big idea, which is not even the bigness, it's more about like the messaging is about conveying an idea or something. And where do I start? So I started with my one-line starter, which people who are doing the work with me with Public Image Works knows, and everybody here has done that we have this message catalog, and it's just a document that you can kind of like put everything in so you have go-to language when you're writing that grant proposal and you need a blurb. You're not rewriting it every single time. Excuse me. So our one-line starter at Social Impact Studios is Social Impact Studios as a creative hub for engaging people in issues and culture. And sometimes I say important issues and culture. And that works to tell somebody like who we are, kind of what we do. And that is always going to be the case. And that's kind of like, yeah, we're telling a little bit about how we do our work. So saying that we're a creative hub, that's kind of like a spark of like, ooh, what's that? Or just our name, Social Impact Studios. Hopefully that's conveying some sort of energy that's not just like graphic design X, communication agency X, like I'm saying social impact at the very beginning of my sentence. So hopefully that intrigues you and gets some sort of idea going in your head. But I think I have to be careful, and everybody has to be careful about relying too heavily on the one-line starter to actually engage people. So I think social impact is exciting and an idea, and it's like always moving and changing, and I get it because I live in that world. For other people, it might be like, that's so scary, or, oh yeah, I'm a hardcore activist, or whatever it means. I really shouldn't only be relying on the mechanical. I feel like that one-line starter is more mechanical than idea-based. So it is also our mission statement. Like I do really think your mission statement should be short and sweet and should be like what you are, who you are, and what you're trying to do. But it's not quite an idea yet. It's not something that's going to be like, "Ooh, that's exciting." So then my other go-to tool is to go to the totally opposite end of the mechanical spectrum and go to the vision. So this is where that clarity of like, what's my immediate thing? Like, what am I? I'm an artist. I'm a director. I'm a communications person. I'm a storytelling muse. I am this and I do that. That's just still not enough. So then my tendency is to go all the way to the vision, because that's what I love to talk about. So then I think about our vision at Social Impact Studios, and it's a vision that I hope everybody shares. And our vision is, we believe a healthy, happy, peaceful world is possible and worth creating together. So that's our vision, is that like, I actually legitimately believe that a healthy, happy, peaceful world is possible, and that we just need to design and commit and communicate. There's all sorts of ways we're going to get there, but that's the big vision. And so I tend to go there because that's one of my like excitement moments. And for some people, that is a message that people can grasp and be like, yes, I'm there with you. How are we going to do that? It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter that I can't describe what the heck Ennis does. It matters that she believes this and I believe this, and we're going to do something together. So that's great, because people like you are here, people I work with are like that. But that wasn't quite the idea either. That wasn't like the thing that was like, okay, what is it that, like, why is messaging hard when I'm thinking of these big ideas or these big visions? And then it really dawned on me that it was more about ideas are sparks of catalyzing energy, that those change constantly. And I'm in a field that is about, the ultimate like insider information about what we're trying to do is like take back over the realm of what advertising does to like connect our stories and really make it tell the stories of real people and real issues, not just selling products for the sake of it. But I'm in that world. And so it dawned on me, I was like, oh yeah, like that's really the core of why people change their slogans every year or so. It's not just like, oh, we need to freshen it up just because things get stale. The reason is that people want to hear ideas. They want to connect with something that's dynamic and energetic. So the fact that McDonald's changes its slogan every couple of years, we can think of that as like just a gimmick to get them to sell more hamburgers. But the reason it works is because people are looking for energy, and they want leaders and people who provide something for them, a service or a hamburger, to actually have energy. And energy comes from ideas and inspiration. And so what I think is really cool about that is that you can change your slogan or your one-line introduction or whatever it is. Like, you still want to have your message catalog so you don't have to be like, what am I again? What do we do again? Or if I hire a new person at Social Impact Studios, I don't want them to figure out what I had to figure out over 25 years. I want to say to them, we're a creative hub for engaging people in issues and culture. And that way they can say that. And while they're learning the inspiring connection to their own energy, at least they have something that they can do regularly as a practice. But this is really about connecting to what is calling you and driving your work. And it may, from an organizational perspective, it may come from your current priorities. So if you have a priority that you have to, raise a certain amount of money in order to stay open, then that is where your core energetic messaging should come from. You should not be trying to like jam it into your one-line starter. You should be clear about what's really going on. So, and I have really heard loud and clear in my head, and I've been saying it very comfortably during this pandemic, neither of those two things, unless I'm actually introducing ourselves there. What I'm saying is we are removing the barriers for fearless communication and action. And that is what that's what's currently speaking to me, is removing the barriers for fearless communication and action. And then, like, the conversation yesterday with Chris that really helped me like make sense of all of this was whatever is really like right now, what is like your current, like what's speaking to you, what's calling you, what is the current energy right now for you to like not pull that into your messaging means that you're not going to be speaking authentically. Because if something is really driving your ideas right now, then you need to get that into your messaging. And those ideas may seem really wacky. So you need to kind of like take those ideas and like coalesce them a little bit and then make sense of them. So that's what I thought we could do today, is have a little bit of interactive time together to work on those, how the ideas or what's speaking to you or what's really calling to you, or even what you see as a barrier, what you think is a need out there. Like sometimes I'm motivated by what other people need and I want to like fix something. And so for me, that was more of a motivator for me to get to this concept of, removing the barriers for fearless communication and action. That was because I was seeing people freezing during this pandemic. I was seeing them literally not able to say what they do, or afraid to say things because it wasn't appropriate during this time or something like that. So I thought we could open it up and maybe even like try on some of that. Like, what is the thing that's calling you? What is the thing that keeps like coming into your mind? Not from a fear, it could be a fear, but what's just like keeps coming up, and how can that be translated either at an organizational level or a personal level into some like idea that you could describe to others that connects back to your mission or your work. So let's open it up, or even some like responses to what you heard me saying.
I think what's on my mind, and is that I have this Roots funded project to work with older homeless youth at an organization nearby, and as we're trying to figure out how to do a storytelling program during these new times in which we find ourselves, I just really need to do it differently, but I don't think doing it digitally is the answer, as we've, so many things have pivoted to the online world. But I just don't think that's going to be an equitable experience for those folks. And so I've been investigating the possibility of, rather than having the program happen over 7 weeks, once a week, with a cumulative performance, which was the original vision, that we would rent a tent and have it be an outdoor program over the course of 1 week. And, we would still practice social distancing and all of that, but the performance aspect is really what's tripping me up. And then the money for the tent was not in the budget from Roots, of course. So I think I was so enthused. I think it was the very first week you said, asking is a demonstration of hope. And you turned that into a mantra for myself. So figuring out how and where that money is going to come from has been a little bit of my challenge lately. And, of course, money in general right now is just a part of our reality, just trying to figure out where it's going to come from. So I've been trying to think, of course I could do the one-off crowdfunding, like let's get this $1,000 to $1,500 we need, or I could use this as an opportunity to springboard into like a more consistent campaign around my work.
Yeah.
And I don't know what would be um, the wiser move, because I think people would very compassionately give to the clear, like, let's just get this done so that, you know,
Sure.
these folks can have their program.
Yep.
And so I'm a little bit hamstrung on the choice about that.
Right. So I wanted to address two things and then open it up for other people. But well, the first most important thing is those are not mutually exclusive ideas that you have. Mm-hmm. That there are different, the reason why I really go back to that action plan clarity tool, which is those 4 things: the purpose, the current top priorities, the long-term goal, and the immediate need, is that there are different kinds of people that respond to different kinds of need requests or asks. So there are people, it is true that more people are likely to give to an immediate need. And there are also people that like to support sustainability. And those may be the same people, but they may be different people. And you are going to have, and I don't have any scientific proof to say like 20% are this and 40% are that. But my gut, my experience tells me that there's a larger percentage of people that will give to something because the roof's on fire, right? And there are definitely, even if it's a small percentage, people who would, for example, start, you know, if you want to start a Patreon, I do lots of Patreons at $2 a month, you know, for people. And I do that because I am dedicated to the sustainability of artists and people in social enterprise. And there's also a psychology around that small sustained giving. The reason that has really started is not just because of the crowdsourcing, but because there's less of a risk when it's a lower amount over a longer period of time. So the first thing I did want to encourage you to do is to not put up any barriers to thinking that whatever you're considering is a both and situation. And then the second thing I wanted to say is what I was hearing in my head and I actually heard it in your voice and in your accent, in terms of the message that you're going to get out there, is I have an idea. And the thing that I heard you saying is that you don't know what you're going to do about the performance thing, and that I want to maybe suggest that thing is not formed in your mind, and so that actually may be holding you up a little bit more in asking than actually the mechanics of whether or not you're going to do an Indiegogo or a Patreon. It may be that you actually don't have your full vision for what that is. And maybe you need other people to help you with that vision. Like maybe we could talk it out here, or maybe your constituents could talk it out. I think your goal would be to get to a point where you could be like, I have an idea. And I know you, I know when you're like, I have an idea versus like, I have an idea. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to get to that point, and that will open up. You're not even going to think about the mechanics of raising that money. That's my
cool. Yeah. I do have an idea about what the performance could be. I just keep getting a lot of pushback and noise from my partner agency about how anything could happen, because they have a lot of people to consider in the process. So yeah, you know, it's that diplomacy that keeps kind of squelching the creativity about how to pivot that part of the work. But I don't want to take up too much space because I know a lot of people have things they need to talk through. So
yeah, so well, I mean, I think that everybody can benefit, you know, from hearing you go through that process too. So it's not that you're taking up space, but I do think just as a like tool-based thing, working through those 4 questions with your collaborating people might help to break through some of that, which is like, well, what is our purpose? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? And because it may be that the resistance that they're feeling is coming from fear and, all the things that, like institutions are more susceptible to than us, like nimble independence. And so you may be able to use that moment as like a visionary leader, not just to be diplomatic, but to help hold them to the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other things, Kristen?
Yeah, I think that Shannon is in that place where I certainly have been. I'm moving through that, which is you've got a lot of unknowns, right, coming at you that you've got to process and wrap your head around. And you have people that are filled with fear, right? So you're the creative visioning things, and you've got a room full of fearful people that are questioning, and you don't have all the answers. And so the idea of making an ask when you might be prompted to answer questions that you don't have a sure answer for can be like really stagnating in the process. So interesting that this week's theme is the big idea, because I didn't look at what it was, but as I was driving yesterday, I thought, yeah, it's funny how we feel like we need to reinvent everything all the time, and sometimes it's right under our noses. Like, you just need to provide the storytelling opportunity for these people, right? It's like how to convene them. It's going to cost a little bit of money to do that. Yeah. But the idea to convene, have an energized, creative moment where people can move each other through the storytelling, right? Like personally and then together, that there's going to be something that resonates, that's moving, that's empathic, uplifting. So partner agencies are going to question a lot because everybody feels really vulnerable right now.
Well, and I think we have this added layer of the fact that we're in Georgia, which has been the bellwether of, pushing the line and the safety, but we're in Atlanta, where we seem to be trying to do it differently. Like, there's actually a t-shirt that says this is Atlanta, not Georgia. So I think that there's this sort of double consciousness of trying to, live our lives, but with the media watching us and all the choices that we make. That's kind of can be crippling. But you're right. I think it is my responsibility as the artist to sort of press into this and encourage calculated risk taking.
Yeah, and if you have are you concerned about the dichotomy between those 2 ways of raising the money, that one of them is focused on this actual project that you're in collaboration with others with, and that the other approach, like a sustainability fundraising approach, could be supporting your work on a longer term? Are you feeling a tension there of like, that you shouldn't be taking this time to support your work when you need to be working on this project?
Maybe. I guess I just feel like, because there's so many other sort of esoteric needs that I have that would, ultimately support my continuing to do work better, like, a computer or that kind of thing, that it's hard to talk about those things that in a way that feels nearly as sexy as like, hey y'all, let's do this amazing program with homeless youth, you know?
Right, right. But I think that the way that Kristen was talking about your work, and then what you fed back, which was like, as the artist, I need to do X, Y, and Z. That's actually what a sustainability initiative would be supporting. And whether or not you're buying a computer or like going on a hike to like the mountain to like figure out your next thing, or hiring somebody, that's not what people are supporting. What they're supporting is somebody who is bold enough to like believe in that convening, what Kristen said, like storytelling happens when people get together. And that's what is being supported. We don't really care if you're gonna get a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more the immediate need thing that would work in the short term, like that 60% of people that will fund something because you need it right now. But it needs to be, that's like an urgency thing. And the tent seems like a clear urgency message. Like, we want to do this thing. We need this tent. And here's the vision. And meanwhile, it feels to me like you can be using your connection circles and you're now 25 to maybe lay the groundwork for a sustainability initiative, which is speaking to you right now.
But would you even begin with having this event, and even if you don't have the sustainability part of it all worked out, that this event could be the catalyst for something? Is there a way to capture these stories and a way of broadcasting the stories, a way of sharing this where it lives on beyond the event itself, so that it could be compelling, like it could demonstrate the impact and the work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have actually done a really good job. So this would be like the fourth of these kinds of shows that I've done. I think one of the opportunities and the challenge of this show is that it's really pushing me to think differently about the aesthetic and the product than I ever have before in terms of the performance. Okay, so I'm just going to steer into this for a minute, if that's okay. Like, so what I'm starting to imagine is to make the performance into something like a drive-in theater.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the participants would have pre-recorded their stories, but they would be there physically on site. And so we would start playing with the idea of a homeless person approaching cars and using signs. So we would either use through like low dial AM or live streaming, that people would have the ability to listen to their stories that are being projected on a screen. But then the participants are also engaging. That's where I'm at. So
that is awesome. That is a really clear idea.
I think it could be really powerful. So even as I'm saying that out loud, I think actually some of the expenses are more than just a tent, because that means projection and other things too. You know?
Right. Yeah. I think that's.
But what an interesting way to sort of do the double entendre of, people fearing homeless, but also fearing fellow man getting too close, the social distancing that you would be maintaining, but also the idea that physical space. I mean, if you think about our personal space, when someone's a close talker anyway, like when people are close talkers and come up to me, I'm like, oh, you're within that like little 2 feet, 3 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot space, right? Where I tend to sort of step back, and then people step closer and I step back. But now we've got this 6 foot space where it's funny, if you have been to a grocery store, how like the people that work there, like, ooh, like if you happen to change direction, they're like jumping, like a cave cricket, like you've come near them, so there is something really interesting about your concept that, okay, we've created this safe place, it's a drive-through, but now I'm going to actually walk, maintain 6 feet in your car or come to your window. What does that look like? You can play Melissa Etheridge. Anyway,
Come to my window.
but it's a great idea. That's a great idea. And they do have blow up screens.
Mhm.
I think you could probably borrow a projector from a library. There's probably a way to do this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing here is kind of like making sure that you make time for that, everybody, like that spark of thing that's like, oh, I got it. I've got this.
Did everybody freeze?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the last couple days have been like really jangly with the internet. And that sometimes it doesn't translate that easily into like, okay, how am I actually going to talk about this? So there are other things that people have been kind of like focusing on and feeling and like energy that like is giving you some sort of feeling of some other like direction or something that you need to be doing, and you need to like talk it out. Excuse me.
Well, I mean, I'm on that. I had like you were saying, when you feel energetic and inspired, right? You've got all the ideas. And I've been shifting. I have like 3 projects, I don't know if you call them that I need big ideas for. And the biggest one is this craft fair. So we have a big craft fair at the end of September that we just canceled the physical fair because we just couldn't do a successful event with whatever requirements, even if we could, have it. And so it was like, okay, let's make that decision now and do something different, because nobody else that has craft fairs is doing things for these artists, and these artists are losing all their income. They need that community, all those things that the artists need. What can we do? And so it's like that big thing where you've got the ideas and they're working in your head and you're really excited. And then you hit those moments. Like yesterday I had the day where it was like, oh goodness, all these things are on the calendar and how am I going to organize them and how am I going to do them all? And I had the overwhelming thing that just gives you the brain cloud where you just can't think. And so I started, and this has this promotional planning tool. So I thought, okay, I'm going to at least create those for these, start kind of getting them in. But I think that, it's helpful, like you were saying, like to then be able to talk that out, to then say, okay, I know I've got these ideas, but I need to engage in conversation with other people to get my ideas going, to get their ideas going. Because when I work really well collaboratively with people where you just bounce off each other. So, you start talking about things and then one idea leads to another. And so I'm kind of at that point where I know that I've got the ideas, but I can also then formulate them and put them in the right spot. And even like I have all these notes, but I'm like, I don't know where this note goes into the document.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, the most important thing about the document is like, it's a framework and things will live in different places. It's just a moment. It's really a focus tool is really what it is.
Yeah.
But I heard you say something that felt to me like a really core nugget of the whole thing, which I mentioned, is that sometimes our ideas come from feeling like we're really addressing a real need. And the thing that really stuck out when you were talking, like you were talking about a lot of different things and a lot of different ideas, but the thing that really stuck out was like artists need to make a living. Like we can't cancel a craft fair just because like we can't pull it off right now. We can't cancel this because it's not just that we're going to cancel a fun event that people are used to going to. It's because people rely on this for their livelihood. And that was like, that really had a core truth to it that you might not in the past have been pushing out as much, because it's more about like, it's the craft fair, come and like have a day out and like see some cool work. And, you know, like the emphasis was on the audience's experience. But what I just heard you talking about was the artist and their livelihood. And that, like,
And
that's moving you, that's motivating you.
it's a really interesting thing because it's part of our mission, right? It's like the practice. So while we do put the artists as a priority institutionally, we're quiet about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like a well-kept secret that we've been trying to like put out there with the artists by showing them for a number of years that we care, and that's always been something that, even if it's not the most lucrative show in the country that somebody does on the circuit, like the artists do big shows and medium shows and small shows to round out their income, the people that go on the road, right? And we often get the compliments that they're treated as people, that we're organized, that we seem to care about them. We're not just show promoters.
Right.
Right, Brienne?
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, I talked to somebody, one of our artists at length, maybe last week or the week before, and he was saying exactly that. Like, he was just had so much gratitude for how we how that's important, how we recognize their needs, and I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, so it's interesting with all of these ideas, because someone was saying that there's some craft show that's doing like a drive-through craft show. Like, where people can be in their car and like drive through,
Like safari.
and
Safari.
we're like, oh, that's supposed to work. You know, and it just seemed like, you know, it was going to be expensive, and you know, there's some people are having some ideas, but we need to flesh them out. And I think that that's one of the parts where we start to sort of trip up, and maybe the big idea is just that it's part of our mission, and we'll figure out a way to advocate for these artists.
It's
and
bringing
that it's
together something that you've not been hiding, but you've been like having two different conversations. You've been having a conversation with your artists, and you've been having a conversation with the public, and maybe this is the moment to like figure out what to say to both.
But what's so interesting about all of it, I think it's no easy task. I mean, when you start to really think about all those details about what does it mean to take this physical thing, and what makes that up, and then bring it to this other platform. Like, I was talking to my mom, who was kind of, you know, like really interested in the idea, but she's like, you know, jewelry, I want to try it on. I don't want to be like, if I can't try it on, I don't know if I'm going to want it. You know, are they going to have return policies? You know, and it's like a simple thing, right? But it's like thinking about that to address it, where, you know, and
Right.
I spoke to an artist. It was the same thing, because he was saying with a physical show, even if we could have it, if you've got a social distance, you know, his whole thing is that like, he's really charismatic, and he hugs his customers, and he lets them try things on. And then if people try things on, is it out of commission for the rest of the show? And like, all of the logistics, there's so much logistics.
So that goes back to something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which is that, and with it's echoing some of the things that Shannon was saying about like all of the ways that people can like put barriers up around any kind of idea. And so there's two things. One is going all the way back to probably like a month ago or more, of one of the early sessions like this. I was saying, don't let the figuring out time get into your like idea and messaging time. Like your big idea, or even a small idea, just like the energy around an idea is this sacred aha thing, or you're feeling it's a calling, or you're feeling really like you're just, you crave it, you know, you want it, you want to see it. That's different, because it's totally like intuitive and internal. And so making sure that idea has been given time before addressing everybody else's needs to justify it. Like, you will still, it's iterative, you will still like work with it, but like just having, like for me, like that whole like removing the barriers for fearless communication and action, that is the idea. And then it's like, okay, now a bunch of people are going to be like, well, I can't afford it, I can't take time, why bother? Like there's all sorts of things that will come at me, but knowing that like it's like, you know it when you hear it and you feel it. And so I think that that's part of that process too, is like giving it time to germinate.
I just want to say back to that, because I tend to get hung up on logistics like you're talking about as barriers. And like this specific one, I think there's a lot of these where it's actually the opposite, where they're not barriers, they're more of like structure or like, okay, how does this help us create, what do we, right? Because I've got the big vision idea.
Right. That's
but
great.
then what are those specifics? How does it actually look? How does it actually happen? So then having some of these logistical things to guide you to really think creative about what it looks like.
That's cool. That's really great.
That's kind of where I'm
nice. I love to hear that.
Well, I think too, let's see, David Grant, who was the president of the Dodge Foundation and wrote the Social Impact Handbook, right? It's like and he always talks about the grown zone, sort of like people get an idea and they expand and then they get to this place where they don't have the answers and they either move through to the other side or they shrink back, those barriers, right? And in the creative process, if you look up creative process, there's 4 distinct stages to creative process. Preparation, what's going on, right? Incubation, which is when everything's coming in and you're trying to sort it through and you're trying to figure out what you're going to use, what you're not going to use, and that aha moment. Then gestation is the figuring it out, right? And then the verification, which is when you actually bring it to fruition. And there is a place between that incubation and gestation that gets really messy if you put an idea out a little bit too soon without fleshing it out. So knowing that sometimes the creative process or being in that grown zone is part of the process, I think has been one of the most useful things for me when I'm working collaboratively with my staff, with the board, or in my studio, or even when I'm trying to solve a problem. Like there's a moment where you just don't have the clarity yet. And that's process. And you can't skip it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like as much as we want to get to the verification part because we can kind of see it sometimes, or we have a deadline, right? We have a deadline that needs to manifest. Needs to manifest by a certain date. And you're like, well, how am I going to do that? I don't even have the idea figured out. I think that's part of what we run into with scheduling and running organizations. If it was, you know, in the studio, just making work until you have the aha moment and you have your breakthrough moment and it's your own personal little world, that's great. But we don't have that.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'm glad that you outline those. I imagine that that's helpful for everybody, not just in just that creative process, those like points and where the tensions come in.
And there's some great, just look it up online, you know, the stages and phases of creativity. I often share that with people. It's such a useful document.
So we're coming up on the hour. Are there other things that people wanted to talk about, folks from Sip Culture or Chris, like how ideas or energy, where the energy is right now, that you could be kind of positively leveraging for your own clarity and messaging?
Yeah, so for me, I think a few weeks ago, I expressed like, you know, some challenges that I was having and just sharing space with folks to kind of express that, all of a sudden got like just before, we were finished with our call, ideas were flowing. And so then it put in a place of like, okay, now how does this happen? Now that I've got like, these ideas generating, how do we implement them? What capacity do we have to do it? So, I'm a little bit at that place, but I'm not really thrown off by it because just from some of, the other calls, like, keeping something going and moving like is part of the work, and there's power in that. Yeah. So I'm kind of all good. I think, getting on today's call and you talking about, our messaging and how, it can be clear, or even, changing up our slogan, it did have me, go open back up our identity catalog and see things that we already had, put out there that we can just, begin circulating just to kind of keep things fresh. And I think, I think for us, that's the thing is we're all trying to reinvent or tweak or figure out how to be relevant when, we're thinking about what's essential and, and how our work is essential, but how it can be received, all kinds of stuff. So I think, just the newness is just like, letting folks know that we're still here. But if there would be something that I feel like we could pay more attention to, because we've never really stopped working, which is a great thing, right, for us. But is really having a real response and engagement with this crisis that we're in, so that maybe some of our message speaks to it. Because like I said, it's like, we've been moving right along. It's just been trying to reconstruct things. So anyway, I just want to just offer that. I know that was a whole lot, but being in space has generated ideas and it's worked well for me. And just, just a good reminder to open up some of those tools that you provided.
That's great. Chris, did you want to say something to round us out?
I don't know about rounding it out, but I know I personally have been having a hard time bouncing ideas off of people, because like that's where going out in the street, you meet people and you have an idea and you're like, you want to like talk about it with someone to see how it resonates and changes, that it's not exclusively mine. And I'm having a really hard time because I can't find people to talk to. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, this experience is divided. I think you talked about it last week, like the people that like, they went into their cave. And I feel like some people are waiting on the edge of their cave. And some people are out there going, okay, the landscape's different. I got to figure out where my berries are. And it seems like all my friends are like on the edge, but none of them are like, or they're like doing it in there's just no talking. And I don't know. I'm having a really hard time.
Yeah. And you and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. I think that one of the things about this moment is it's bringing us really tightly connected to our family, either our families of origin or who we actually live with. Like, we're just in that. And so we're connected there, and those people, like, we've been on the path with our whole lives, and, we know kind of how to navigate the what things we're talking about, what we're not talking about. I think the next layer out, which is our friends, we're also reconnecting with people that we haven't seen in a long time. I don't know about you, but I've been having like reunion Zooms and like people I haven't actually had in my life. And I think that can get confusing because we think that our friends are also like-minded people, and they aren't necessarily. And so we're used to going to our friends to have conversations that are really deep and meaningful because we can let down our vulnerability with our friends. But in reality, and we all know this, not all of our friends are the same. They're not seeing the world the same way. And so
and like, I don't mean to interrupt, but like even going to a craft fair, I don't necessarily want to buy something. It's to go and like, oh my God, I really like that art. And like, you just have like these moments of like connecting with other human beings that like I miss deeply. Yes. They're like the spontaneous interactions. Mm-hmm. And it's so intentional. All the computer screens, it's all so curated. And I miss it. And I miss that part of the craft fairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even going to a movie and laughing with someone you don't know and being like, you found that funny too. Like I never realized how important those moments were in my life.
Yeah. So those are sometimes that's the dynamic energy. That is dynamic energy, and that you need to be okay with like getting that across. And in the particular, in your particular case, it's also about like finding, you may need to find other people to do that with that you don't know yet. So it might be, if all of us could kind of be on the lookout for communities of conversation or discussion groups, or like, I don't know, podcasts where another way that people are doing this, keeping an eye out, because it will gradually get to a point where you can be out there physically, but not right away. And so like Brienne was saying, like taking that energy that is like, could in the past have been a thing that gets you bogged down, using it to like figure out something new. All right. Oh, you're muted, Kristen.
I love that idea, Chris, what you shared about, going to a craft show. Is part of it is just seeing how amazing people are. And like it's not just about consuming, like owning. It's not about possessing all of it. It's about celebrating it. So
Yeah.
there is something really interesting. So Chris, it might be fun to have your contact information, because maybe we'll loop you in a conversation about our craft fair.
I was gonna say, Chris, I'm happy you can bounce ideas off me. Reach out.
Great.
Sure.
I will do an email connection between you.
Yeah. But I think, and also the thing about that too is that it's about, I think those kinds of experiences and those in-person experiences is about feeling those connections with people. So that's why at a craft fair, right, you either make friends with an artist or you end up buying, right? Like an artist, their best customer is their return customer, because they form those relationships, those connections. And then, like that's what people want.
Yeah.
That's what they crave in their lives. And so,
That's a great way to wrap this up. Thank you. So yeah, it is about connections, and people respond to ideas, not just because they're like the cool ideas, but because they're ideas. Because energy, dynamic energy is what you need to put out there right now. It always has been, but now more than ever, like, go for it. And that energy might be super positive and like clear, and that energy might be like, I don't know, I'm feeling this thing. So
Right.
all righty. Well, thanks everybody. Good to see you. And I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you next week. Oh, I did want to say, like, I was planning originally on ending these at the end of May, but I'm just going to keep it going. So
Yay.
yay. All righty. Take care. Bye.
Bye.